We started Blackburn Farm for a whole series of reasons. I guess we both feel pretty strongly about local food systems, and we're on the Stanley Plateau here, which once had more than 30 apple farming families, and now there's just 2 or 3, and there's so much about that breaks our heart. And it's not a reflection on Stanley, it's a reflection on the greater cultural expectations around what food should be and can be, and it's quite disappointing that people don't understand the value of a small-scale apple orchard. So most of Stanley's apple farms are small, and most of them are family-owned, and at that scale it just wasn't viable to compete in commodity markets. So we watched progressively as people were pulling their apples out or abandoning them, and it broke our heart. So we had this desire to see what you could do with a small-scale property, a small-scale orchard.
The place we're at here now is Europa Gully Orchard, so we lease this orchard. It's not a home orchard. Our home orchard's much younger, and we're establishing that, whereas this is about 20 years old. And it's a collection of about 900 apple, pear and quince trees that we lease. There's also cherries, but we don't run the cherries, they're still run by the owner of the land. And there's around 20 different types of apples within that 900 odd trees.
That span harvest over about a 6-month period. We spent some time in the States and researched local food systems over there, and quite specifically small-scale family-owned apple orchards, to see how they were running it. And they were running it through a direct-to-market approach rather than a commodity approach. And that actually worked for us because Charlie's background is in natural resource management, and so it lends itself beautifully to farming, and mine is in tourism and marketing, which lends itself beautifully to creating a kind of environment where people can connect with their food.
In the establishment phase, to be honest, it can be the spectrum of love, and I won't go as far to say as hate, but there are some days
it's pretty tiring.
Where it's tiring, but that's farming, and that's probably small business as well in many regards when you're doing long hours. And whilst we're in this establishment phase, like today is the first day we've opened for Pick Your Own. The last 2 days have been extremely long getting ready for this, and we've got a lot of other stuff going on as well. We're delivering.
Well, the last 6 months really have been. We've been gearing towards this for a long time.
But we love the ability of working for ourselves. We love the ability with Blackburn Farm to run a business that connects us to our community and to provide food for our community and provide food security and food sovereignty, so where the community actually still owns part of their food supply. And we love raising our kids in amongst all of this. They get to interact with all of the staff that we have coming and living with us to help us with the apple harvest, all of the workshops that we run, and all of the interaction that we have with the community, including these Pick Your Own days. So yeah, there's so much positivity to it all. It definitely outweighs and makes all the hard work very much worthwhile.
There's a sense of purpose. What it does, it gets you out of bed in the morning, and you might not have got to bed till 1 o'clock the night before, and you might not have slept that well because your brain's really full because you're a small business owner and you're a farmer, and we're really connected with the local food movement, and there's things with that are deeply worrying. And so, there's lots of, as Charlie said, lots of reasons to be kind of negative about it, and we don't mean to be, because we love it. We're incredibly assured that this is the right path. It's certainly the right path for us. We absolutely know it's the right path for us and our family and the community that are immediately around us and those that are gathering and coming towards us more so. But yeah, it's the purpose. Patience. So growing apple trees does not happen overnight, and I'm a really overnight kind of person, which has been a bit torturous, but they're just gas guns. No one's getting shot.
And related to that, I've learnt that it's a long journey and
long game.
Yes, so our business that's not something that's going to happen within 2 or 3 years. It's something that's really going to take potentially decades to really hit its straps, and potentially with the way we're establishing the orchard at our place, it takes a long time to get your soils healthy enough that the system actually becomes fully self-supporting. So I've learnt an increased appreciation for patience and trying not to bite off too much really to ensure that we actually enjoy the journey and appreciating that the journey is long and that there's no destination that we're getting to in 2 or 3 years' time. It's going to be a lifetime of work for Jade and I and our family, so we have to enjoy the process and we have to enjoy the journey, because that is the day-to-day, that there's no destination, this is it.
Potentially multiple generations. We are absolutely in its infancy, and we've been given the generous offer of accessing someone else's journey as well. We have kind of leapfrogged. Our orchard is only 3 years old, and this orchard, as Charlie said earlier, this particular one is 20 years old, but it's been in an orcharding family for multiple generations. So we've managed to leapfrog with all of his knowledge and access to land and to established trees that we never would have had if we didn't have the generosity of a generation before us. So we would like to think that our role will be quite similar as we go on. We're not necessarily very good at either of those things.
No, they're the two things that we've learned.
We're the two things we know we need to do better, and they're the two things that we're probably least good at. I always say an overarching connection to food and a desire to genuinely value it. So if you know where your food comes from, you trust it, you know how it's grown, you've probably possibly picked it yourself, you know the vagaries of it, you know the nuances of it, you understand its seasons, you're connected to it, you cook with it, you understand when you can and can't access it when it's fresh. It gives you better nutritional value. I think if people were more connected to their food, what it would mean is that they wouldn't waste it in the way that they do, because they value it. And as soon as a product is undervalued, it undermines every ounce of work that goes into creating food. And it doesn't matter who we are, it's foundational. We all eat. And so that has somehow been lost in humanity's existence, and the understanding that we're actually reliant on something that we don't value is a really weird thing to me. We would like the general public to know that we are deeply committed to the really long haul of this. We know it's not a fly-by-night project. We've been researching it and working it for the last 10 years already, and we're not even at the point where we can sell food off our own orchard, but we can off this orchard. We will be open and transparent in everything that we do and all of our growing practices, and so for that it means we won't get organic certification, but that doesn't mean that we're not following, and then more so, organic principles of growing. And we will continue to work with our community to start to really celebrate food in all different weird and wonderful ways, through potluck dinners and through wassails and through ritual processes. We'll do lots and lots of things that appeal to different audiences. A Pick Your Own appeals to a really broad audience, but a really kind of wacky, out there pagan wassail doesn't necessarily appeal to everybody. So we're really mindful of that. So our year is really beautifully divided into quite distinctive seasons. So spring is very much our grafting and workshop season. So we graft all of next year's heritage apples that we then sell bare rooted, and have all of our workshops. So we've got about 8 or 9 that we run every year, and they change a little bit, but mostly there's 8 or 9. And then summer is full-blown getting prepped for our Pick Your Own and getting ready for the harvest. Our whole autumn is absolutely harvest, so it is open for Pick Your Own as many days as we can be. And then winter is that absolute hibernation time where we really take stock. We kind of regroup as a family, and we do all of those things on the farm, like irrigation and fencing and breeding and cuttings and all of those things that don't require outside interaction at all, and we really kind of come back into as a little team.
Well, I think we're very lucky because we've got an amazing community already, and they're already very connected to their food system. But overall, I think if they had what I would love, not just our community, but the broader Australian community, and maybe even the Western industrialised community, is a deeper connection to place. So I think from that extends a whole bunch of benefits to community. If people feel more connected to the place where they are, they're more likely to respect the land and the people that they live with. They're more likely to be connected to their local farmers. They're more likely to be connected to their local schools. They're more likely to be connected to their local bank. All of these things around localism and really being connected and proud of your place where you live, and forming a really strong sense of belonging to your place. And yeah, for me, I think that would be an amazing thing. And I think it's something that's slowly happening, particularly in small rural communities. It's very hard in the city to do that, but in places like Beechworth and Stanley, I think there's quite a strong connection to place and an increasingly interest in doing that. And I guess a lot of this also arcs back to Indigenous culture, and we can only begin to imagine what it means to be connected to something for 30, 40, 50,000 years. And I think it also helps us appreciate what they've gone through as far as our Indigenous culture and having that place taken away from them, and us trying to learn a little bit from them about how we can connect in a similar fashion like they did, and learning about place from our Indigenous cultures. Orchard season starts in the middle of winter when the trees don't have any leaves on them at all. So we spend weeks pruning the trees. They just keep growing, so we have to keep pruning to make sure that we've got the best fruit in the best part of the tree, so it's easy to pick. We spray the trees in the middle of winter with an eco oil to control predatory insects on the apples. We train the trees, we thin the trees in spring, then we continue to prune. We cultivate for weeds, to keep the weeds out of the way, because we don't use any herbicides. We're slashing, we're spraying for codling moth as well, which is the biggest pest of apples, and we spray a biological insecticide, which is an organically allowed insecticide spray. So it's a virus that isn't harmful to humans or any other insect. It just kills the codling moth, so we still have all our beneficial insects which help with pollination. There's beehives that get brought in every year to pollinate the trees, and then they have to get taken away. So there's a huge amount of work just to get the trees to this point, so it's by no means just to sit back and watch the trees grow. I wish it was that easy. I mean, I love the work, but yeah, it's a lot of work. I'd love people to know how much work it takes to grow food and fibre, and I know there's a lot of people that are already cognizant of that and are very appreciative of food that's produced locally, or anywhere for that matter, that supplies them with their daily nutrients or their clothing. But that's probably only a small proportion. I think it's very easy when people are disconnected from their food system, when they're buying things from a chain store or from a supermarket, to not really think about their clothing or their food. But if you actually step back and think about it, and think about how hard someone has actually worked to make that. And I don't think it really matters if you're a commodity industrial farmer, or even if you're a more local, smaller scale farmer like us. Regardless, every farmer works bloody hard, and they have to expend a lot of mental effort and financial effort to actually get something off, and it's not easy. I don't think there'd be not even one farmer out there that says it's an easy job. It's a great job and it's enjoyable, but it's really hard work, and usually people do it because they love it. But it's lovely to be appreciated, and I think that's probably the benefit of us working in a localised food system where we're interacting. And from this very counter, I sell the majority of our fruit, and people thank me for it directly. So I get a lot of that really lovely, beneficial feedback where they're thanking me for the time and effort that I've spent, knowing that this apple crop here is taking me 6 months to get to this stage. It's not just something that grows on a tree and I sell. It's a lot of work. I spend hours on the tractor here and hours researching, and I think that's something probably that commodity farmers miss a bit, because they're selling directly into a market and no one ever really thanks them for it. So I'm really grateful that I've got that opportunity to interact with people. But yeah, overall I'd love the public to understand just how much work it takes, and to really truly appreciate it, because if you don't appreciate it, then it's likely to be lost and likely to be gone, especially smaller scale localised farming. A lot of people do think that literally the fruit just grows on the trees itself. They say, well, what do you do here all year? Like, doesn't the fruit just grow? But no, it doesn't just grow. If I left these apple trees to their own devices, you would not get a single piece of fruit off it. It'd look disgusting, and it'd all be misshapen. So our season starts in the middle of winter. We put on an oil spray, an eco oil spray, and that reduces some of our codling moth pressure and some of our other insects that are living in the trees, and also some of our aphids and other bits and pieces. And then we have, even though we don't use any artificial insecticides, we still spray a biological insecticide, which is a virus, which kills the codling moth, and that has to go on every 7 to 10 days. And that's very expensive. Cost me $1,000 a litre to buy this product. It gets diluted heavily, but regardless, I'm on my third vat of that this year.